Pro-Trump protesters. They've stormed the US Capitol building. Supporters of the president have breached barricades and are inside the building and inside the chamber as they are trying to seek to disrupt a joint session of the US Congress set to confirm Joe Biden's election win. Multiple US media outlets are reporting a woman has been shot and is in a critical condition.
So the Virginia National Guard is sending in 200 state troopers to help regain control, and Washington DC's mayor has ordered a citywide curfew from 6 p.m. local time. That's in about 2 hours from now. President Donald Trump has urged calm, but he hasn't called on them specifically to disperse. Earlier, he did address thousands of supporters, saying that he would never concede that he lost. We can speak now to our correspondent, Greg Jennett, who is in Washington for us this morning. There's a lot happened in the last hour or so. Greg, bring us up to speed.
Well, it seems an eternity. Why don't we wind it back even further, Mads, because all of this did start, it seemed ages ago to me, with that rally that Donald Trump had addressed. I was there talking to members of the audience who'd come along from states far and wide. We came across what must be described as angry Americans, really, from Ohio and Florida, and they really gobbled up the messages that came from Donald Trump. And then once that rally dispersed in the mid-afternoon, that's when trouble really broke out, because a very large number of them, tens of thousands, stormed the Capitol building, only a 15 to 20 minute walk from the White House, gaining access by all sorts of means. Some just went through sheer weight of numbers, through police lines and through barricades, defying tear gas, fire and pepper spray as they went. Others, once they got to the edge of the building, are seen to have broken windows and climbed through them, all of which put them in a position to then invade the abandoned chambers. So the Senate and the House, aware of the security breach, had bailed on their constitutionally prescribed duties for this day, which were to certify Joe Biden's Electoral College victory. They scurried off to their respective offices and were locked down. And then in these vacant chambers, we saw protesters, some of them armed, which is illegal in the city of DC, and others sitting in the very seat where Vice President Mike Pence had sat, posing for photographs there. Pistols were drawn in one of the chambers, the Senate chamber, I believed, and there they remain. These protesters are still in the building. Police are trying to mount a major security operation outside it, but haven't yet pressed in, as far as we can tell. So this is an ongoing security operation that spreads beyond the building to, Mads, it must be said that the city of DC is slapping a curfew down for this evening and then trying to activate elements of the National Guard as well.
And we've got our correspondent Catherine Diss, who is out on the streets in DC. We'll speak with her a little bit later on, Greg. But can we just get an update there on the Vice President and those members of Congress? So the Vice President was whisked away. He has spoken, saying that those protesters will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, but they are very far away from that at this point, when the protesters, the struggle to get them under control is still very much in play.
So the question now is how you put this genie back in the bottle. So let's step through the major players here, Mads, and discuss what they're signalling to Americans about this crisis that is unfolding. And it is a crisis. I don't think that's overstating the situation that this Capitol faces at present. So Donald Trump has tweeted. That's all he's done so far. He has asked people to follow police instructions. What he has not done in any strident language at all is to condemn the actions of these protesters who have shut the Congress and the Capitol down. But we do know when he's not tweeting, he has at least taken phone calls from important Republicans, many of whom are now splintering obviously away from this Trump agenda to delegitimize Joe Biden's election win. One of them is the Republican minority leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy has phoned Donald Trump and asked that he deliver an address to the nation. That hasn't been responded to publicly by Donald Trump, but that is an important Republican figure in Kevin McCarthy making that call directly. Mike Pence, let's move to him. He was whisked out.
Greg, I'm sorry, we're just going to interrupt you here because... Sorry, apologies, Greg. We have just been told that President-elect Biden is speaking. We're going to cross now to hear him.
The doing of the people's business. Let me be very clear. The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, do not represent who we are. What we're seeing are a small number of extremists dedicated to lawlessness. This is not dissent. It's disorder. It's chaos. It borders on sedition. And it must end now. I call on this mob to pull back and allow the work of democracy to go forward. You've heard me say before in different contexts, the words of a president matter, no matter how good or bad that president is. At their best, the words of a president can inspire. At their worst, they can incite. And therefore, I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege, to storm the Capitol, to smash windows, to occupy offices, the floor of the United States Senate, rummaging through desks, on the Capitol, on the House of Representatives, threatening the safety of duly elected officials. It's not protest, it's insurrection. The world's watching. Like so many other Americans, I am genuinely shocked and saddened that our nation, so long the beacon of light and hope for democracy, has come to such a dark moment. Through war and strife, America's endured much, and we will endure here, and we will prevail again, and will prevail now. The work of the moment and the work of the next 4 years must be the restoration of democracy, of decency, honor, respect, the rule of law, just plain, simple decency. The renewal of the politics. It's about solving problems, looking out for one another, not stoking the flames of hate and chaos. As I said, America is about honor, decency, respect, tolerance. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. The certification of the Electoral College vote is supposed to be a sacred ritual, which we affirm. The purpose is to affirm the majesty of American democracy. But today's reminder, a painful one, that democracy is fragile, and to preserve it requires people of goodwill, leaders with the courage to stand up, who are devoted not to the pursuit of power, or the personal interest pursuits of their own selfish interest at any cost, but of the common good. Think what our children watching television is thinking. Think what the rest of the world is looking at. For nearly 2.5 centuries, we, the people, in search of a more perfect union, have kept our eyes on that common good. America is so much better than what we've seen today. Watching the scenes from the Capitol, I was reminded as I prepared other speeches in the past, I was reminded of the words of Abraham Lincoln in his annual message to Congress, whose work has today been interrupted by chaos. Here's what Lincoln said. He said, "We shall nobly save or merely lose the last best hope on earth." Went on to say, "The way is plain, peaceful, generous, just, a way which, if followed, the world will forever applaud and God must forever bless." The way is plain here, too. That's who we are. It's the way of democracy, of respect, of decency, of honor, and commitment as patriots to this nation. Notwithstanding what I saw today and we're seeing today, I remain optimistic about the incredible opportunities. There has never been anything we can't do when we do it together. And this god-awful display today is bringing home to every Republican and Democrat and Independent in the nation that we must step up. This is the United States of America. There's never, ever, 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 ever been a thing we've tried to do that we've done it together. We've not been able to do it. So, President Trump, step up. May God bless America. And may God protect our troops and all those folks at the Capitol who are trying to preserve order. Thank you, and I'm sorry to have kept you waiting.
President-elect,
about your inauguration, sir? Sir, have you
that's
spoken
US
to the holiday?
President-elect Joe Biden speaking live from Delaware. He's called what's happening at the US Capitol building an attack on democracy. He's called on President Trump, Donald Trump, to do his own televised live address and end the siege. He called it the siege, end the siege. Donald Trump has only tweeted saying that protesters, Trump supporters, should be peaceful, not calling for them to leave. Joe Biden has called it an insurrection, a dark moment in US history.
And you would have to say that that is the speech that we would have expected the current president of the United States to give at this particular point in time. But it's fallen at this stage to the president-elect, who is due to assume office in just a couple of weeks' time.
Let's go back to that developing story out of the US Capitol. Our North America correspondent Catherine Diss is on the ground in Washington. Hello and good morning to you. What are you seeing there?
Good morning, Espo. We just took a walk up to the Capitol building, which you can see behind me, not a little while ago. We've had to pull back because we just can't get enough signal up close there. But we're just seeing tens of thousands of supporters of the US president gathering around that complex there. It does feel as though a lot of the tension, though, has come out of the situation here. We are aware that multiple law enforcement agencies on both the city, state and federal level have all been deployed to the Capitol to try and restore calm and order around the building, which was, as we know, breached by some of those supporters just a little while ago. And that appears to be the case now. Where we are, it feels relatively peaceful, and we're just seeing streams of people flowing out from that area. But certainly the most amount of law enforcement officers and agents I've ever seen deployed to the Capitol here to try and bring things under control.
We are hearing that the National Guard and federal police are coming in. The mood now has suddenly shifted. Is that for any reason, or is it more intense closer to the Capitol building?
Look, it is more intense as you get closer up there, and there's a great deal more shouting as you head towards that direction, Isk. But it certainly feels as though the rapid deployment of those law enforcement officers and agencies managed to really bring the situation under control quite quickly. I mean, we're talking here about upwards of 6 or 7 different agencies and levels of law enforcement that were deployed within that short period of time. Reinforcements sent from Maryland, which is the neighbouring state. For instance, we've seen helicopters flying overhead, and police are blocking off and cordoning off sections of the city to try and contain people and make sure that those people who intruded the Capitol building were then removed from there. So the mood certainly has shifted, and it will be interesting to see how the night goes on, particularly since the Mayor of DC has issued a curfew for the people that are currently on the street. We're allowed to continue to stay out here, but non-essential services and people that are involved in those industries do need to leave. So, look, it certainly feels like a lot of the tension has come out, but I'm just going to take you over this way, Is, because we're just seeing a large number of police cars pulling up. I think it's Constitution Avenue. So I'm guessing they're coming to try and, make sure that the situation at the Capitol building is contained and under control. I suspect that law enforcement doesn't want the sheer number of people that we're seeing gathering around the Capitol building staying there so that they can restore some order and allow members of Congress to be able to return to work. Because as we know, this unfolding situation has meant that certification process for Joe Biden's presidency is now on hold because they had to evacuate members of the House and the Senate. So I'm guessing that's probably what those police cars are going past us for.
Catherine Diss in Washington, thank you so much for that. And yes, the curfew comes into force in a little while, but Catherine will be allowed to remain on the streets and get us news as it develops from Washington.
Donald Trump has asked his supporters at the US Capitol building to stand down and go home. He posted this video to Twitter just moments ago.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel, but go home and go home in peace.
So Donald Trump there in a video message which was posted to Twitter after US President-elect Joe Biden had delivered his message condemning the violence in the Capitol. We hear Donald Trump there saying that he loves all of those armed protesters who have stormed the US Capitol building in order to disrupt the certification of the election. Sarah, we'll talk to you about that. Well, there's been some breaking news out of Georgia. Our American in Oz, Sarah James, joins us again. So just your reaction, first of all, to that message from Donald Trump.
Yes, well, I think it's a striking contrast between the message from the current president of the United States calling these special people and the incoming president of the United States who says that this is not a protest, this is insurrection. And indeed, this was a formal ceremony to just basically put a stamp on what had already happened, which was the free and fair election of incoming President Joe Biden. It turned into a scene of high drama, chaos, and fear. One person is in critical condition. Several law enforcement members have been injured as well with those protests. And now we've got a new incoming senator from Georgia. That's the most breaking news.
Yeah, which is the most breaking news. But first of all, I just want to bring you some pictures. We did actually have the moment, I think, that those armed protesters stormed into the building of the Capitol. We'll get those to you. Here we go. Here it is now.
My challenge today is not about the good people of Arizona.
And it will stand in recess until the call of the chair.
We'll pause.
Protesters are in the building.
Thank you.
There wasn't anything you said.
So the doors were blocked initially, and then we also saw a video earlier of a congressman saying that they were being told to get the masks from underneath their seat because of pepper spray being released around the place.
Yeah, and Sarah, as you were just alluding to, there's other major news coming out of the US today.
Really dwarfed by what's happening in Washington, D.C., but nevertheless a historic election in Georgia where not one but two Senate seats have both gone to the Democrats. Now, what this means is that the control of the Senate will go to the Democrats. It'll be a 50-50 split, but in a 50-50 split, the vice president, that will be incoming Vice President Kamala Harris, will have the tie-breaking vote. This will enable Democrats to enact their agenda to put through legislation. It is a total game changer. This is John Ossoff. NBC News is projecting that he will be elected. That's against David Perdue, the incumbent Republican, and this was just extraordinary. But again, as dramatic as that situation is, it really is overwhelmed by the scene of what began as a protest but turned into a
siege and occupation?
A siege and occupation of the U.S. Capitol, which continues right now as we speak. And, the sounds of terror from some of those who were inside as protesters, some of them armed, moved in. There's a picture of people standing there in the chamber of carrying off Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, carrying off her podium. This isn't a peaceful protest, ladies and gentlemen. It's important to remember that a number of law enforcement agencies have been called in. We're watching people scale the wall there. The FBI, the National Guard of Maryland, D.C., and Virginia. And so law enforcement is on the way. We saw just a short time ago some video of some cars squealing around the corner with sirens blaring. But to see the United States Senate have to evacuate, be forced to not only close and bar the doors, but leave the chambers. Yes, these are new troops there, and I can't instantly tell you who they are.
Would that be the National Guard coming in?
I hate to speculate because there's a number of different law enforcement that could be. Again, there's FBI SWAT team that has been set and also National Guard. So exactly who that is. I mean, look, what we can see right now is that the situation is getting under control. Republicans, Vice President Pence called for the protesters to go back, but really, truly quite an extraordinary set of comments from the current president of the United States, saying that these are special people.
And that he loves them.
And that he loves them.
And they need to go home for the time being.
And quite a contrast to the incoming president, Joe Biden, who again made this very strong point that this is not a protest. You're interrupting the vote, not even the vote, the counting of the vote, the ceremonial putting the seal on the fact that there is a new president of the United States. One other thing I should mention is that after his remarks, Biden said, as an aside, he's not worried. He will be there when he's inaugurated on the 20th. Everything will go forward. So those were the final asides from the incoming president of the United States, Joe Biden.